Welcome to the live stream. We are talking about AI stocks. Are they in a boom or a bust? Meaning, has AI stocks topped out? And that's the question on everyone's mind because AI stocks have run very far, very fast. And so, to put it another way, the question is, are AI stocks in a bubble? And is that bubble getting ready to pop? I want to take a look at some of the most popular stocks: Nvidia, AMD, Intel, and then I want to take a look at the overall semiconductor industry. Reason being is because Nvidia did something that it hasn't done in a long time. So I want to take a look at the stock chart, and then I want to give you couple questions that you want to ask yourself to kind of be more educated on if you believe a sector or a industry or a company is in a bubble or the beginning of a boom. So let's get into it. So here we go with Nvidia stock. And the first thing that I want to draw your eyes to is something that the stock has not done in a while. And if you're not familiar with this term, I'm going to break it down for you. So Nvidia, the term that I want to break down for you is a bearish engulfing pattern. So let me write that down for you. Bearish engulfing pattern. And my friend told me this the other day. She was like, sometimes I want to jump in the stock market conversation, but I don't really know what you're talking about. And so I said, let me break stuff down a little bit more. So for those who are brand new, they can join in. What a bearish engulfing pattern is when a stock opens higher than the previous day. So what you're looking at is a chart, and Nvidia closed on Thursday around the 920 mark. So that's this green candlestick. I'm drawing an arrow here. That is where Nvidia closed. And then the next day, what it did was it opened up here at about 950. Well, even though it opened up here at 950, the stock sold off at the end of the day and it actually closed at 875. And so from a visual standpoint, that candle engulfed the previous day's candle, meaning it swallowed it up. Let me just draw it here. You can see the top and the lower portion engulfed the previous 2 days. It engulfed that day and it engulfed that day. So what does that simply mean? That means that is an engulfing candlestick, which is typically saying that the sentiment may be changing, meaning people may be starting to exit or get out of the trade, because not only did it open higher and people use it as an opportunity to sell their stock and get out, they sold it past the position that it was at yesterday and past the position that it was at 2 days before that, and sold all the way down to where it engulfed the previous 2 days movement higher. My man Charles Hunter, happy Saturday, brother. Welcome to the live stream. Anybody else checking into the live stream, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching it from. We're streaming on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So let's get back to Nvidia. So that is a bearish engulfing pattern. It's bearish because stock went down. Here's something else that I thought was interesting, and you can look back. It hasn't done that in forever. I mean, I'd have to go super far back to see when's the last time it threw a bearish engulfing pattern, but I don't see any bearish engulfing patterns that stick out at least over the last year and a half, and we can probably go back even further than that. So for Nvidia to throw this huge bearish engulfing pattern on increasing volume may be telling us that it's time to take our profit in some of these AI stocks. Now, something else interesting happened as well. After hours, so most people don't understand that the market trades from 9:30 to 4 p.m. And then there's a market that happens from 4 p.m. to about 8 o'clock, meaning you can trade after hours. Not a lot of movement happens in after hours, but take a look at this. After hours on Nvidia, it fell another $24.28, almost 25 bucks that the stock fell after hours. So if you take the total move, it fell 5%, almost 6%, 5.5% during the market open, fell another 2.7%. you're talking about a 8%, a little over 8% drop off for the stock during the trading session, and then after hours, meaning the selling just kept going, meaning people apparently were trying to exit this stock. So that's not necessarily a good thing, but keep in mind, stock has been on a tear from, I mean, look at this. This thing was a $400 stock not that long ago. Look at the beginning of the year. Here, let's take a look. 2024 stock right here was about a $500 stock. It pretty much almost touched $1,000. So, I mean, the stock's doubled just from, the beginning of this, almost doubled just from the beginning of this year, which is we're only in March. So it's not that unfathomable to think that people would be taking profit on the stock. But then we have to ask the question, are we in a bubble, which is a whole nother question. But before I get to that, I want to still take a look at a couple other stocks. Lorraine, Huey, welcome to the live stream. Welcome to the party. Let's take a look at another fellow stock that's very heavily talked about in this space, and that's AMD. So if we look at AMD, unlike Nvidia, it didn't have a bullish or bearish engulfing pattern. But what it did was, you can see AMD is starting to round out. So what rounding out means is, let me draw it like this. So these are just some terms that you want to be familiar with. Number one, bearish engulfing. Number two, rounding out. So what does that mean, Jason Brown, when you say Nvidia is rounding out or AMD is rounding out? Well, here you kind of see the stock just goes up, kind of goes up. And then when it rounds out, it stops going up and kind of either flattens out or rolls over like it did here. Well, we're seeing that same scenario play out where the stock went up, and it's having a hard time going higher. It threw a doji right here. And that's another term you want to be familiar with, doji. What is a doji? You're like, Jason Brown, you're speaking Greek. A doji is an indecision day. And you say, well, how do you know it's an indecision day? What does that mean? Well, when we look at AMD, what it means is it's a day where the market or the stock opened and closed right at the same point. And so when it opens and closes right at the same point, like it went up, it went down, but it eventually just closed right at the same spot that it opened at, it creates these like ninja stars is what it looks like, which means when we say indecision, the market couldn't decide if it wanted to go up, if it wanted to go down. And so it just closed right at the same spot that it opened at. So you can see it's throwing these dojis, these indecision days, very close to a doji, a little bit bigger of a body. But then you get to Friday and you can see that the stock opened right here. It opened here, it ran up, and then it couldn't hold. And so it sold off. And not only did it sell off, it sold off past where it opened and it closed lower. And it happened all on increase in volume, which may mean that people are maybe getting nervous about AI stocks, semiconductor stocks. Maybe it was something that happened on Thursday's night presidential speech about the state of the economy. Or it could just be people taking profit, taking some money off the table, and then they're getting ready to reset their position. So it could be any of those things. Lori Ferguson, welcome to the live stream. Thanks for checking in and saying hello. All my YouTube people are usually not the shyest. I appreciate you guys. So let's take a look at one more stock, and then I want to look at the overall industry. And then I'm going to give you 3 questions that you should be asking yourself to say, hey, is AI stocks in a boom? Meaning, is this the beginning of a boom, or is this the beginning of a bust or a bubble where these stocks are getting ready to come back down to earth? One more stock. Well, there's 2 more I want to look at, but Intel. Intel is another semiconductor stock. They make chips. Very similar. This one didn't gap up as much, but we did have a higher opening, and then the stock couldn't hold. It just got crushed Friday, sold all the way off, bearishly engulfed the previous day. And you can see that increase in volume of people selling off, trying to get out of the stock. This is another one having a very hard time. They announced earnings here, stock got smacked down, and then it built a little bit of a base. You can see this base right here where Intel's like, okay, fair value for the stock is about right here. It came back up as if it tried to close this gap, like it was going to try to make its way back up and close this gap from where it fell from. This is a gap. See that? It just gapped down. And so now it's trying to come back up. We thought it was going to rise and close this gap. Friday, smackdown just came through, knocked this stock straight back down. And so it's like, what you're seeing here, or at least what I'm trying to draw your eyes and conclusion to, is there is a theme. You have Nvidia, which is the big dog of the semiconductors and AI chip stocks, gap up, bearish engulfing, sell off. Then you got the medium brother, the second tier player, AMD, had a huge run up, couldn't hold, sold off. Then you got the little brother that wasn't doing that well in the first place, but also couldn't hold its gains for the day, turned around and sold off. So then that had me thinking, as we start to go into the question, are we in a bubble? Are AI stocks getting ready to sell off? It made me say, let's take a look at the overall sector, because these are just three stocks, but they're three of the most traded, highly talked about. You got the leader, you got the middle brother, and then you got the little brother of AI. And they all kind of did the same thing Friday. They sold off. So it led me to say, let's take a look at the broader sector as a whole. And let's ask ourselves, what did the semiconductor sector as a whole do? And that's going to be very telling. So let's look at the SOXL. SOXL, SOXL, which is the daily directional semiconductor bull ETF. And so when you look at the SOXL, you can see that the entire semiconductor sector just gave up their gains on Friday. Huge increase in volume, or should I do it like this? Huge increase in volume, and then that volume was definitely not buying. That volume was selling. And so something happened Friday. Something happened where people said, let's take some money, let's take some chips off the table, no pun intended, because these are semiconductor or companies that make chips, computer chips, microchips. So people said, let's take some chips off the table. I'm not sure why. And why was Friday the day to do it? Is there some data coming out next week that people are afraid of? We just got through the 2-day Fed speech from Powell, and even Powell said we might be lowering interest rates at some point. And so there was no news from that really made us come down. So we'll have to see if it's just a technical rotation where people are taking some profits, taking some chips off the table, and do we rebound Monday? Now, I said I was going to give you a couple of questions to think about to determine if this is an AI bubble. Are things over? Was this as good as it's going to get? So let me draw those out, and then we'll wrap up the live stream. So question number one that you have to ask yourself, because the news will sensationalize this stuff, and they'll make you be scared, and you'll be like, get your money out, it's an AI bubble. And so when trying to find out, is AI in the bubble? That is the question. Is AI and AI stocks in a bubble? That is the question. But here's the question that you want to ask yourself to determine if a stock is in a bubble. The first question is this the beginning? Is this the beginning or the end of this technology? And this is a good question to ask, because what we're basically saying is, to put it a different way, I want you to think critically when I say, is this the beginning or the end of this technology? The question you have to ask yourself is, have all the companies that are going to invest in AI, have they already spent all their money? Nobody else is going to invest in AI, and the technology of AI is as good as it's going to get. when I think about that question, is this the beginning of the technology or is this the end of the technology? I think about companies like Apple who haven't really integrated AI into Siri yet. I think about Amazon who hasn't really integrated fully AI into Alexa yet. I think about the artificial intelligence of, you know, the chat GPTs of the world, the Microsoft. When you ask it to do something, it doesn't necessarily give you the most accurate data yet. You look at Google, who had to pull down their I think it's called Bird or Baird or whatever they're calling it, because it was creating images that were harmful. And so AI is not at its peak. It is just beginning. There's still things we have to course correct and fix to make it get even better and be even more useful. So when I think about this first question, are we at the beginning or the end of this technology? I believe we're at the beginning. And if we're at the beginning, then we can't be in the bubble, because the bubble would insinuate that it's done. It doesn't get better from here. Second question you got to ask yourself. All right. So number one, are we at the beginning or the end of this technology? Second question we got to ask yourself is, has everyone implemented it already? And so have every company that's going to use AI already implemented? I'm talking Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Have they implemented AI to analyze buying patterns and buying behaviors of its customers? Has Facebook fully integrated AI? They said they're spending $10 billion with Nvidia to increase their AI to understand the algorithm, what people post, human behavior on their platform. And so you got companies like Facebook who have $10 billion, but what about the rest of the companies who don't have that type of budget to spend or are not ready to spend it yet? And so has everybody who's going to implement AI have already implemented? Kind of like cell phones. Let me give you that example. So when you think about cell phones, is that industry in the boom or a bubble? Well, cell phones are kind of in the bubble because everybody has a cell phone. And then we went through a stage where not only did everybody have a cell phone, people start cutting their landlines and getting rid of their landlines to have a cell phone. And then you got to a point where people had two cell phones, a personal one that they carried, one for work, and maybe even a third one where one they left at home to become their home phone. And so you can kind of see how that's a bubble. And if you look at the release of a new iPhone or new Android, they don't really get that much better. It's like slight improvements in the camera, different things like that. And so there's not that much new innovation that can come to the cell phone. Does everybody have a cell phone who wants one? Yes. So you can kind of see how those two questions, when you put it in the perspective of a cell phone, it's like, is it the beginning or the end of the technology? Well, it's kind of like the end of the technology, or it's reaching maturity, because it's not much new invention to the cell phone. Has everyone implemented it? Does everybody have a cell phone? Yes, even little kids have a cell phone now, right? And so it's kind of the end of the technology. So you could just take just those two questions right there alone will help you make a decision if we're in a boom or a bubble or a bust of this industry. So let me know in the comments if just those two questions alone, help provide some more clarity on this stuff. And then the third question that you want to ask yourself is, what's the word that I want to use? I'm going to need to say profit or the economies of scale. So has the profit or economies of scale has it been realized? And so what I'm trying to say is, or the question I want you to ask yourself is, as we just now start to implement AI, the question becomes, have we seen the full benefits to the bottom line of our workers being more efficient, are being able to cut down on waste, being able to cut down on wasted time? whatever that means or looks like for every company as they start to implement AI. Like, has the profit as they start to invest in AI, have they already seen and realized the maximum profit or benefit that they're going to see from AI? I don't think the answer is yes yet. I mean, there's so many things I'd love for my iPhone to do that it still doesn't do. I mean, what if my iPhone could say, hey, go into my calendar, find any events that they overlap, and then send the email to that person, reschedule that event. Or like it's not that smart yet, but I think with AI, we'll be able to say, hey Siri, look into my calendar, find any events that are double booked, and then I want you to take that one, move it to Thursday, but make sure I don't have an appointment 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after. Can it be that smart to do that yet? I don't know. What's funny is as I did that, Siri came on and started listening. But my point is, I think those are some of the improvements that can be done just on our cell phone. You don't even have to be a business person to do that, just on our cell phone. What about just being able to throw everything in your kid's schedule and say, hey, rearrange this and map it to where I can drive and get to each appointment on time. And if I'm going to be late based on traffic and weather patterns on that day, let me know which event I should possibly reschedule. And so I don't think the profit or the economies of scale have been realized from people implementing AI yet. And that's just me as an individual trying to use it. I'm talking about what about big companies who can then either shrink their workforce or have their workforce work more efficiently and start to save profit because they, not just say save profit, save on wasted hours or increase the amount of productivity that their workers can work because they're bringing AI in to get them answers quick, map the best routes, map the best way to do something, observe human behaviors, the days that people are most productive, least productive, different things like that. So I think there's so much more to this AI thing that we're not in a bubble yet because there's so much more to go on that. So again, is this the beginning of the end of this technology? Has everyone implemented it who wants to implement it? And it has the profit or economies of scale or workplace efficiencies been realized yet? I don't think so. I don't think so fully. So I don't think it's in a bubble. I'm interested to see what the market does this upcoming weeks, being that we got this big sell-off Friday. Is that going to be an opportunity for people to come into the market and buy these stocks who were waiting for a pullback? Or is this the beginning of a bigger pullback and we reset our expectations about how far and how fast these stocks can run? That is yet to be seen. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notification. Make sure you're tuned in so we can go live and keep the conversation, discussion going as the AI stocks and the development of what happens in the market continues to unfold. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.